Hello everybody, I'm Mike Vinsel, and today I'm going to continue reading my book, Travels with Nobody. And today we're going to start chapter 12, which is on page 183. Today is May 8th, 2024. And so here we go. Okay, chapter 12, Caffe Trieste. The next day, the day after fishing on the Navarro River, Matthew took me to the Caffe Trieste in North Beach. We took the bus downtown, the number 6 Parnassus. I still remember it. We got off the bus on Market Street, walked up to Union Square, and took the Stockton Street tunnel and emerged into Chinatown. We took a side street up to Grant. It was a Sunday around noon. The sights and smells of Chinatown were all new to me. In shop windows I saw whole roast ducks hanging by their necks, glazed, shiny red hot sides of pork ribs. One shop had baby chickens, dead, just taken from their shells before they would have hatched, to be sold as food. There were Chinese shops with window displays of ginseng roots pickled in 2-gallon jars, myriad herbs and medicines, looking like thin wood chips of several colors, dried and displayed in cardboard boxes, identified in characters as exotic and impenetrable to me as hieroglyphics. Matthew and I walked on. We got to Broadway and took a right to the corner of Columbus. We crossed Columbus and entered a zone of stripper clubs and peep show places. Then we went down to the City Lights bookstore. Matthew had explained what an important role it had had in American literary culture. I had heard of City Lights books. I was familiar with where it had mixed with the Grateful Dead scene. I knew of Allen Ginsberg through having read On the Road by Jack Kerouac before I left New Hampshire. I knew of Neil Cassidy through that book too, and I knew his association with Ken Kesey and thus the Grateful Dead. We went inside. Matthew bought me a copy of Hot Water Music by Charles Bukowski. He read a few lines in the store. I remember Bukowski using the word peel to describe opening whiskey bottles. I understand what he meant. Yes, peel the thin metal cover off the top. We walked up across Broadway into North Beach. As wonderful and fascinating as I had found Chinatown to be, North Beach also fed my eyes, nose, and ears with a feast of new experiences. There was an Italian meat shop with whole hams hanging from a pipe along the ceiling, strings of sausages dried, white with some kind of mold. There were stores with wheels, balls, blocks, and braids of cheeses of types I had never known, and tubs of olives, some brown, others shades of green, some big, some small, some shaped like miniature footballs, some dried like oily black raisins. We took a side street and came to a cafe on the corner. This was Caffe Trieste. We went inside. Matthew told me that this had also been a hangout for famous writers and other celebrities. He said we might see somebody famous walk in. The interior woodwork was covered with dozens of old black and white photographs showing famous people who had visited over the years. There was Allen Ginsberg, Neil Cassidy, Jack Kerouac. I didn't know who the others were, but Matthew pointed them out to me. He knew them all. We looked at the different coffee drinks written in colored chalk on the blackboard behind the counter. I knew what espresso was, but I had never heard of cappuccino or latte. And here's the picture that goes along with that. So it's the Caffe Trieste from the outside there. Okay. So Matthew explained those and I realized that, of course, yes, I knew that latte meant milk. We ordered 2 cappuccinos with Veuve. Veuve was an egg-based liqueur. I had never heard of that before either. We paid and took our cups, real ceramic cups with saucers, out to the tables on the sidewalk. I took a sip. That was my first cappuccino. It was very good, I thought. Back in the day, Matthew explained, people would bring their typewriters and spend whole days writing in the cafe. In the early 60s, he said, it had been a popular spot for poetry readings and folk musicians to perform. It was a sunny afternoon, not cold by New Hampshire standards, comfortable enough to sit outside. So, what route did you take across the country? Matthew asked. First, I drove out to Aurora to see Grandma and Grandpa. Did you hear about that from Frank? I asked. I heard from Dad. He told me about Grandma's stroke. Did you hear about that from Frank? Matthew asked. No, I was there. Grandma had been taken to the hospital just a couple hours before I arrived. I hadn't called or anything. Grandpa was freaking out. He thought it was going to be the end for Grandma, I said. Did you stay with him at their place? Matthew asked. No, I had gotten a motel room before I went there. I wasn't sure if I should have stayed or not. Matthew pondered. Later we should call Dad to see if he's got any news. That's right, I said. So, after that, I drove down to Frank and Sarah's. Frank told me that Dad had told him that it had been a stroke. Grandpa didn't know at the time when I was there. I stayed a few days with Frank. That was cool. Their kids are great, I told Matthew. Did you spend Thanksgiving with them? Matthew asked. No. I got the idea that their plans had been made before I showed up, so I didn't want to be a bother, I said. Stevie Mon, you wouldn't have been a bother. You'd have been a brother, Matthew said. Well, they were going to somebody else's house, so I figured I'd get on the road. Actually, I spent Thanksgiving at a truck stop in Kansas, sitting out a storm. That was all right. After that, I took I-70 to Denver, drove up to Boulder just to see it, and then down I-25 to Albuquerque. I-40 to Albuquerque, I-40 to Los Angeles, and up the coast route from there. I camped out a couple places and stayed at motels. In LA, I slept in the parking lot of a wholesale fruit market. And that was funny. I woke up with all these people around my car. I was totally in the middle of everything. People having to go around me, carrying big boxes of fruit and everything. But nobody bothered to wake me up. When I finally did wake up, people were laughing, like they were waiting to see how long it would take me to wake up, I said. Yeah, I remember when I first hitchhiked out here, I got a few short rides early. Then I got dropped off at a truck stop in Ohio and never had to put out my thumb again. The truck drivers hooked me up with other drivers on their radios all the way to here. That was cool, Matthew said. He thought a while. So what's your plan from here? Well, 2 of my friends from New Hampshire are moving to Olympia, Washington. They're going to Evergreen State College. I'm going to hook up with them and try to get a job and see how things go, I said. Sounds good. Evergreen, that's an interesting school. Might be good for you. You should take a couple of classes there, too, he said. Well, I would have to apply and take the SAT and all that. I don't think I'd be accepted, I said. No, we talked about this before. Here's how it works, Matthew said. You can take college classes without being accepted as a regular student. You just get a class catalog, find the classes that fit your schedule, and go to the registration office and sign up. It's usually about a couple $100 a class, Matthew said. Really? You can just do that? I asked. Sure can. Now, even if you don't finish up at Evergreen, you will still get an official transcript of the classes you take and the credits they are worth. Later, you can use those as credentials to apply full-time to whatever college you want. But be sure to take only classes you know you will like, because you have to get good grades in them, he said. I remember us talking about that. I do want to go to college someday, I said. Oh man, you don't even know. College, it's the best. Wow. When I was at UNH, what a blast, Matthew said, wistfully. Okay, I'm going to do that. I'll get some job and take 1 or 2 classes at Evergreen, I said. That's right. Evergreen doesn't give letter grades like most places. There, it's pass-fail. But they give you a personalized evaluation. That might be better for you, he said. I finished my cappuccino. You know, if you get tired of Olympia, you might want to think about moving down here. City College of San Francisco is a great school. You don't have to be accepted there. They have a placement exam, not an entrance exam. If you have weak points, the exam will find them, and you can take classes to address those. And lots of the professors are actually Stanford or Berkeley professors who donate their time to teach at City College. And get this, it's only $50 a semester. Your books for one class will be more than your tuition, Matthew said. Huh. Thanks, Matt. That's very helpful advice, I said. I wondered to myself how Matthew knew all these things. One more thing. After you turn 24 years old, you can be admitted to most colleges without having taken the SAT, and high school transcript requirements can be waived. It's called applying as a non-traditional student. If by that time you have a stack of transcripts from college classes you've already taken, you have a good shot at getting accepted, he said. I imagined myself as a college student. Ah, yes, Matthew said, imitating a Jamaican accent. Stevie Mon is a happening dude. We chuckled. We left and went back to Matthew's place. When we got there, we called our father in New Hampshire. I let him know that I'd made it safely. I hadn't called when I first arrived. I asked him if he had heard from Grandpa Phillips. He told us that he had, that Grandma was still in the hospital and that it didn't look good. Latest I've heard is that it's touch and go, he said. He said that Grandpa's Canadian relatives were taking good care of Grandpa, so we shouldn't worry about him. He told me he was glad that I had made it safely across the country. After that call, we called our brother Philip. He had graduated from UNH a year ago and was still living in New Hampshire. Matthew convinced him to fly out to San Francisco for Christmas and New Year's. Maybe we could even get tickets for the Grateful Dead shows at the Civic Center. Matthew said he would try to arrange it. A few days before Christmas, Phil called with his flight information. Matthew and I agreed to pick him up at the airport. As I remember it, it was Matthew and me who went to pick up Philip at the airport. But I must be mistaken. It must have been just me who drove down to the airport, not with Matthew. If Matthew had been able to go, we would have taken his car. It was more reliable than mine. And if Matthew had gone with me, one of us would have taken note of where we'd park the car at the airport. I had not known that I would have to pay such close attention to that. So, Matthew must have had some errand to do, because I drove down to the airport, backtracking on Route 101. Yes, I remember that. It was definitely my car. I was alone. I took the exit to the airport and followed the signs to short-term parking. It was a multi-story circular parking garage. I had not taken account of how many of these towers there were. I had just parked at the first opportunity I saw. Then I went inside the airport, taking the elevator to a covered walkway that led into the main part of the airport. I followed the signs for arrivals. I forget which airline it was. I got to the gate, saw Philip's flight number on the sign, which said it would be arriving on time in just a few minutes. The plane landed. I waited, watching until I saw Philip. He had just a carry-on bag, so we went right out to the car. I was a little bit proud that Philip knew I had just driven across the country and that I had known or had been able to figure out how to navigate the airport traffic system to be able to find his flight terminal. I didn't say anything about that. We walked together out to the parking garage, but from this angle I saw that there were, I think, 4 different parking towers. I had to choose which walkway to take. I was guessing, but acted like I knew. I hoped I had guessed right. We got to the elevator. Which floor had I parked on? I had not taken notice. I was pretty sure that I had chosen the right walkway to the right parking garage. I remember I had taken the elevator down to go into the airport, so I would have to take it up to go back to the car. There were, again, I think 4 levels up, 3 levels down, if I'm not mistaken. I tried taking just 1 level up, pretending not to have failed to take note. We got out of the elevator and walked among the cars. Soon, Philip noticed that I didn't know where the car was. "God damn it, Stephen. Do you not know where you parked?" Philip asked. "Ah, shit, you don't. Ah," he sighed, rolling his eyes. "Okay, here's what's up. I'm going to sit over here," he indicated with his hand. You're going to find the car and pick me up here. Now look, this is level 4, he pointed. Section G, he pointed. Can you remember that? Level 4, Section G, he said, stretching the words out to communicate his exasperation as clearly as he could. I walked away to find the car. My body tingled unpleasantly numb. My thoughts utterly scrambled as I tried to figure out a way to redeem myself from this embarrassment. I had to find the car quickly. Now, after the shock of Philip's words, I had no recollection at all from which way I had come, and I had to remember quickly. Oh God, help me find the goddamn car. Saint fucking Anthony, help me find the car, I muttered to myself. And don't let me forget where Philip is, I said out loud. Level 4. It was level 4. I was still on level 4, Section G. Okay, I still remembered that. I walked methodically through the parking garage, keeping mindful of the other people driving by, parking and leaving. I searched the whole level and had not found the car. I went up to the next level. I searched methodically. I felt like Lenny in Of Mice and Men. I knew that in day-to-day life I was like a normal person, but there had been times, especially when I was a child, when I had been terrified at the thought that I was not a normal child. Why had it taken me hours to struggle through homework that other kids were expected to be able to do in a few minutes? That the other kids could do in just a few minutes. The previous summer, I had also had an occasion where I had neglected to take note of where I had parked my car. That was at Saratoga Performing Arts Center in Saratoga, New York. We'd gone there for the Grateful Dead concert I mentioned before. Chuck, Rich, Pete Malm, Karen Parker, another girl whose name I forget, and I had all packed into my car for the drive from New Hampshire. I drove. We were caravanning with a bunch of other friends in 2 other cars. One group of people from Boston University, through whom I had met Karen Parker, and another group coming from New York City, who were friends of Pete Malm, of Pete's from McGill University in Montreal. We had all left together from the house in New Dartford that Chuck, Pete, Rich, and I were renting for the summer. When we got to Saratoga, we went to a campground and all chipped in for a camping spot. The next day, we all packed into our cars and went to the concert. Our 3 cars got separated in the traffic, and we parked where we could. There were fields where we could park for a few dollars. I parked at one. After parking, somehow we all managed to find each other in the huge crowd. There, with all of us together, somebody handed out little tiny pieces of white construction paper about a 1/4 inch square. We ate them. We had coolers full of beer and snacks and stood around watching all the people. It was an amazing thing. There were cars with license plates from all over the country and Canada. People had school buses that they had painted and fixed up in all kinds of ways. Some of those had signs offering rides to the next shows. It was all very interesting. As the afternoon wore on, the atmosphere among the people took on an aspect of a huge family reunion. It got to be that I could look into the faces of strangers and feel a special kinship. I enjoyed that feeling very much. It was also remarkable how many beers we could drink without getting sloppily drunk. It was as if the tiny white pieces of paper that we had eaten had a prophylactic effect against alcohol. We were all brothers and sisters, everybody hugging each other, and then it was time to get our things together, make sure we had our tickets, and go into the show. Then the music started. I remember that place has a roof of acoustic panels which spreads outward toward an uncovered lawn area, along the rim of which was a walkway lined with trees. People had blankets on the grass, and some people climbed the trees. I remember climbing one of the trees too. I was very good at climbing trees because I worked at the apple orchard. In the winter, the work was pruning the trees, which meant climbing the trees. That was in the old days with standard-sized trees. They got pretty big. Greg Edison had given me the nickname at the orchard of the Sloth. But not because I was lazy, but because I could climb out onto the ends of branches like a sloth does. I found that the walkway was a good place to be because I could walk along it and find the people I came there with. I would not get separated from our group. But it was also fun to see other people, to make eye contact, and to see that they shared something with me, a feeling, and their pupils were all dilated. I found that beautiful. Anyway, when the show was over, I hooked up with my crew and we left to go back to the car. Once we were out of the theater itself, I realized that I had no idea which field we had parked in, and it had become dark. Rich Sanderson complained a little, but he realized that none of us had taken note of where we'd parked. So we walked, trying to ascertain by the position of buildings which was the field we should search. We searched and searched. It seemed that lots of people were in the same situation, wandering, looking for their cars too. We walked aimlessly for what seemed like an hour, all thoughts aswirl. Back at the exit to the road, the procession of cars whose owners had found them was developing into a line of hundreds of yards. Finally, with the influence of the tiny paper ebbing, I pulled myself together to try to remember where we had parked. I remembered the spa building. I could see it. Which direction had that been from where we'd parked? I didn't know. I hadn't noted it. We searched randomly in the dark for my car, the 1970 Volvo 164, the tension building in my mind that soon my friends would lose patience and I would suffer ridicule. Finally, it seemed hopeless. I gave up. I had no idea where the car was. I stopped walking and leaned back on the trunk of a car to get my bearings while I tried to figure out where my car might be. Then I realized that it is not a good idea to be sitting. I realized that it is not a good idea to be caught sitting on somebody else's car. I stood and turned around. The car I had sat on was my car. That is a true story, and how it happened is still a mystery to me. We were relieved. We all sighed the long, heartfelt sighs that accompany the waning hours of that form of intoxication. As intensely enjoyable as it was at its peak, the first inklings of the descent back to what I knew would be my normal consciousness were welcome signals indeed. Interestingly, nobody else had noticed that it was my car I was sitting on until I had pointed it out. Then they thought that I had been putting them on, that I hadn't been able to find the car. But it really was a surprise to me. Still, to this day, age 57, sitting by the pond in Japan, I wonder if that had been one of the effects of that piece of paper. Had it allowed the memory of where I had parked the car to lurk beneath my awareness of the moment, able to guide me to my car without my conscious knowledge, a phenomenon akin to dowsing? Or had it been just plain coincidence? That had been the previous summer. Pete Malm drove us back to the campground. He was confident he would be fine, and he was. I remember us all in the car, windows down. We could hear the music from the car in front of us. They were playing a tape of Glenn Miller hits, String of Pearls. I remember it well. None of us would have thought to choose that music for that situation, but it was a perfect fit. I still remember it. There had been a good explanation for forgetting where I'd parked that time, but this time, several months later, at San Francisco International Airport, still age 20, I had to find the car again. This time, there was no excuse. But before despair completely took over, there it was, my car. Somehow, I had kept enough track, unconsciously, to have chosen the right garage, and just one floor off. I thought to myself, well, Stephen Stroh, now you know how airports work. Next time, you'll pay attention. I drove down to level 4, section G, and picked up Philip. I guess in real life it had been just a few minutes, so he wasn't so angry. In my mind, I had blown it into a major self-examination. Philip had always been a very intelligent person. In school, he had always gotten excellent grades, and after college, he was doing very well as a software engineer. But he had little patience for people who were not so smart. Sometimes I felt intimidated when I was around him. I suppose unnecessarily. Anyway, he was friendly once we got going. It was his first time in San Francisco, too. That had been his first time to fly on an airplane. How had he known how airport parking garages were organized? That thought occurred to me as I drove. I remembered the way back to Matthew's place, 101 North, Golden Gate Park exit, Fell Street to Masonic, left onto Masonic, right onto Haight, left onto Ashbury. I was able to make it look like I knew my way around the city. Matthew was home when we arrived. he got beers from the fridge, and we all settled in to watch a 49ers game. Philip and Matthew talked about microprocessors and things like that. I told Philip that I had stayed with his friend in Albuquerque. I mentioned that he was planning to come to San Francisco for the Dead shows. That brought up the topic of the shows. Tickets were sold out, but Matthew knew somebody who could hook us up. I told them that Philip's friend had wondered if he could stay at Matthew's house for the string of shows. Philip and Matthew looked at each other, Philip shaking his head. So I guess the answer would be no. I had given the guy Matthew's phone number and hoped he wouldn't call. But a few days later, he did. Okay, anyway, that's the end of chapter 12. So we'll end it here and pick up next week. Okay, have a good day. Bye.